Hello and welcome to Telesur. This is From the South, from our studios in Caracas, Venezuela. I'm Carla Gonzalez. Let's begin. Cuban diplomats have rejected the U.S. blockade to Cuba during a tense meeting in the United Nations. Shouting, "Cuba yes, blockade no," diplomats say the United States is using the UN to launch a campaign against the island. The meeting was held by the UN Economic and Social Council under the demands of the United States. Cuban diplomats consider this to be a violation of the organization's rules and charter. They shouted and banged on their desks in protests.
Cuba is proud of its human rights record, which denies any manipulation against it. On the contrary, the United States lacks the moral to give lessons, as much less in this manner.
Our correspondent in New York, Karina Cartagena, tells us more about this meeting.
There has been a tense meeting in the United Nations as the United States tried to launch a campaign against Cuba. Cuba condemned the U.S.'s attempt to use the UN to launch that campaign. Cuba sees this as a violation of United Nations Charter, a violation of the use of conference rooms, and an act against a member state. At the beginning of the meeting, the U.S. deputies tried to prevent Cuban diplomats from presenting, and UN security personnel tried to remove representatives from the room. The General Secretary of the Organization of American States, Luis Almagro, was present as a United States guest. But those present rejected his presence when he criticized the Cuban government. This meeting has taken place just a few days before the General Assembly is expected to vote on a request for the U.S. to put a stop on the economic sanctions against Cuba.
The migrant caravan heading towards the United States continues to advance to the Guatemala-Mexico border. About 1,000 migrants set off on Saturday, but the group has now grown to over 3,000. Members of the caravan have decried their living conditions in Honduras and spoken out against statements by the region's governments.
In Honduras, we have a corrupt government. Honduras should be sanctioned for condemning these migrants to misery, for keeping them in a country full of violence. The government of Honduras is corrupt. They have murdered people in the streets. It is a criminal government supported by Donald Trump. They have caused this migration. The sanctions are already there. People are already suffering them.
And social leader Bartolo Fuentes has been arrested when he was traveling with the migrants' caravan. Following his arrest, Fuentes was expelled from Guatemala. He had strongly criticized U.S. migration policies. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump has threatened to cut funding for Honduras if it doesn't stop the caravan. Trump warned via Twitter that the migrants should not try to enter the country without legal documents. He said the Honduran president should take immediate action to stop them. Mexico has also said it won't allow the migrants to enter unless they comply with immigration requirements. Our correspondent in Guatemala City, Mario Rosales, has more details.
The caravan of Honduran migrants is currently headed to the east of Guatemala. From there, they plan to arrive to the Mexican border with the final goal of entering the U.S. The caravan continues to move forward despite the threats of President Donald Trump towards the Honduran government. Trump has said that if the caravan is not stopped, all economic aid to Honduras will be cut immediately. Human rights organizations are demanding the government of Guatemala guarantee the rights of migrant children, saying that the life of children should be their main concern. That's all we have for you now.
That was Mario Rosales from Guatemala. Venezuelans will have to present their passports again to enter Peru. Migration authorities say this will continue until the judiciary rules on the latest appeal on this matter. Venezuela has announced that the US dollar will no longer be used as a reference for transactions in the domestic market. The Ministry of Industries and National Production, Tarek El Aissami, said the transactions will now be referenced to the euro, the yuan, or any other convertible currency. This includes auctions under the foreign exchange system known as DICOM. The minister also announced that the country is set to open bank accounts in Asia and Europe to carry out currency transactions.
We're going to begin, and we've already advanced with Asian and European countries, the opening of bank accounts that serve as banking correspondents and intermediaries for the operations that are beginning at this moment.
This announcement comes soon after the National Development Plan was launched in 6 different parts of the country.
The workers' movement, state governors, and the president took part in a meeting to learn about the National Development Plan. It is based on 15 priority areas for production. As part of the new economic model launched almost 2 months ago, the goal is economic independence.
They are using techniques of economic war to twist the arm of the people, and many of them are also involved in political conspiracies. I count on you to take the action that is necessary.
In a country that has been under economic siege but wants to overcome this, more and more businessmen are joining this new economic era. Among the results, Venezuela's cryptocurrency, the Petro.
We want to support this new initiative of the governments to boost supplies and production and to get the goods on the shelves. This is an opportunity to reach the agreements that are needed for this.
The workers say they have to work for the country to overcome this financial blockade imposed from abroad.
We have to be the leading pillar of Venezuela. In spite of everything other countries have done to us, the working class is the priority for this country and for its oil production.
New elements are being added to the Recovery and Growth Plan, which seeks to bring together different sectors of the population to achieve the well-being of all Venezuelans.
Coming up, more stories. Meanwhile, you can follow us on Twitter at Telesur English and my personal account at Carla G. Telesur. So send us a tweet. We'll be back. Welcome back. Brazil's federal police has asked the public prosecutor to open an investigation against President Michel Temer. Temer may face charges for corruption, money laundering, and criminal association. In the investigation, the police also implicates the president's daughter, Maristela, and 11 other people. The Senate in Uruguay is currently debating a bill to protect the rights of trans people. Lawmakers have met with human rights and LGBTI activists to promote the project. The bill is aimed at fighting discrimination against the trans community. If passed, the law would provide scholarships and job opportunities to the trans community, among others.
This is a historic day. We are hopeful that the majority of lawmakers will vote for this law. The campaign to support this law is aimed at creating awareness that we need to guarantee the rights of the trans community. Even if the Constitution guarantees rights for all, we need this law to protect the trans community.
This is an important day because it is the final stage of something we have been fighting for. The National Council of Sexual Diversity, civil society, and several government offices are supporting this bill. We are hopeful that the bill will be approved, as we have seen the support of the people. We have received more than 60,000 signatures in the last month and a half in support of the law. These show how important this is.
Our correspondent in Montevideo, Mateo Grille, has more.
The debate for proposed law on transsexual people has started in the Senate. This is the first step to pass the law. Trans people in Uruguay have been historically denied their rights. Reports show they have a life expectancy of 40 years and leave home before reaching 18. They do not have real access to the labor market. The trans community hasn't had law that protects them until now. The bill establishes that 1% of public posts are reserved for trans people. It also establishes scholarships to fight the early drop from education. The law also guarantees their protection once in the labor market and medical benefits that the state has to assure. The law has widely been supported by civil society. More than 60,000 signatures were collected before the law was proposed. If the law is approved in the Senate, it will go to the Chamber of Deputies. Social organizations are hopeful that the bill is passed before the end of the year.
That was Mateo Grille from Uruguay. After 5 weeks on strike, unions and social movements in Costa Rica are planning a mass demonstration against the government's tax reform plan. It is set to coincide with a crucial court ruling on the validity of this reform. Our correspondent in San Jose, Fernando Francia, reports.
Today could be a landmark day for the government's proposed tax reform. The country's judiciary is set to make a decision on whether the reforms process up to this point is open to legal objection. If the court decides it is, that would basically block the bill. Because it would mean the bill needs 38 votes to pass, which it does not currently have. So after being passed by the Legislative Assembly in their first debate, the whole process could be struck down and a brand new reform bill would need to be drafted. Trade unions and opposition parties remain expectant over today's decision, which should come in the next few hours.
And the political scenario in Peru continues its controversies. Now hundreds of supporters of Peru's jailed opposition leader Keiko Fujimori have marched in Lima to demand her release. She has been in jail since last Wednesday, accused of money laundering. Marchers also expressed their support for her convicted father, former President Alberto Fujimori, whose pardon was overturned earlier this month. He was serving 25 years in jail for human rights abuses during the 90s.
I'm joining the march like thousands of Peruvians who are coming here today, not just from Lima, but from different parts of the country, to show their support demanding the freedom of Keiko Sofia Fujimori.
They took away Alberto Fujimori's pardon because of ill will, for revenge. And that's why we have come here, with heart, with love in our hands to support the Fujimoris.
And the Peruvian Congress has closed the case to dismiss the public prosecutor Pedro Chavarri. With 17 votes for and 9 against, Congress has rejected his dismissal. Demonstrators said now the investigations into Keiko Fujimori and others in power could be at risk. A group of young Guatemalans are collecting solid waste to draw attention to the contamination of the Atitlan Lake.
These young people from a musical band called Sabor Latino start the day with a mission to clean the dock of the San Pablo area in Sololá.
We have focused more in the artistic area, but we see the situation in which the lake is, the diseases, the bacteria, and all the garbage that accumulates in the shore of the lake. We take the initiative to be fully committed to this environmental activity.
The famous and tranquil Atitlan Lake is being polluted, and the youth is witness to its ruin.
I always take this route to go to school. Then every time I pass here, I'm very sad to see that all of this part is full of garbage.
These youngsters say that during their cleaning, they have detected at least 3 types of contamination: black waters, waste from agrochemicals dragged by the rain, and mainly solid waste.
We have found that the waste produced by the large companies, the industries, specifically cans, plastic, and disposable bags, they're the major contaminants of our lake.
The question these young people always ask is if they will be able to fully clean the Atitlan Lake, which has a surface of more than 130 square kilometers.
We are only cleaning the shores of the lake in a symbolic way, so that way we transmit that message.
We are also trying to talk with people from other municipalities so that we can join and do something for the lake so that we do not lose it in order to someday be really sorry about it.
There are 12 areas in the Sololá province which are situated on the shores of the Atitlán Lake. The next plan of action for this group of young people will be to demand the municipal council approves a regulation which will stop the use of plastic bags.
Mexican dancer Isaac Hernandez has been awarded with the Benoit Prize, considered the Oscar Award of Dance. The Benoit Award is the greatest recognition that a ballet dancer can receive. Despite the many obstacles he faced, Hernandez succeeded to get to the top of the dance scene. Brazil has beaten Argentina 1-0 in the 100th edition of the Superclásico of the Americas, the South American Football Classic. A stoppage time goal from defender João Miranda after a corner kick of Neymar Jr. gave Brazil a cheerful 1-0 win. The match took place in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. We'll take one last short break, but stay with us. Thank you for joining us again. Saudi Arabia's Consul General to Turkey has left the country just hours after a search of his residence was announced. This over the disappearance of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. A Turkish investigation team has already searched the Saudi consulate looking for clues of Khashoggi's whereabouts. The team found some toxic materials that had been painted over and an audio recording that may indicate that the journalist could have been killed. And United States Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has met with King Salman and his son, the Crown Prince. They reportedly discussed Khashoggi's disappearance and agreed on a complete investigation. Khashoggi, who was an outspoken critic of the kingdom, went missing after entering the consulate in Istanbul 2 weeks ago. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has said some items in the Saudi consulate have been painted over. He spoke after the consulate had been searched for 9 hours. Some toxic materials were also found at the premises.
Right now, as you are aware, as a result of our intense contacts, this search process in the consulate has started. Yesterday there was an intense procedure underway until morning, and it will continue. My hope is that we can reach conclusions that will give us a reasonable opinion as soon as possible. Because the investigation is looking into many things, such as toxic materials and those materials being removed by painting them over, this will depend on the conclusion that will come out from there.
UN Special Rapporteur on Torture Niels Melzer says more evidence is needed before making any assumptions on the case of the missing Saudi journalist. The official also said international organizations should get involved if there is no answer based on credible and objective investigations.
If no solution can be found in conducting a credible and objective investigation on that level, then perhaps at some point international mechanisms should get involved. I think we're a little bit early in the process to come to a definite conclusion there, because obviously this is a very delicate issue, and I think we should give the involved states time under public scrutiny to come to a conclusion that they want to address this.
The South African opposition has dismissed reports claiming the party benefited from the founding of collapsed banks. A report says the Economic Freedom Fighters Party received more than $1 million out of more than 150 million that were looted at a mutual bank. But leader Julius Malema has accused opponents of using the report to smear the party ahead of the 2019 elections. One person has been killed in Guinea on the second day of protests over disputed elections. A relative of the 22-year-old Ibrahima Balde said that he was shot in the chest by security forces in the capital, Conakry. The opposition says the elections in February this year were fraudulent. They've announced more protests on Thursday with the intention of bringing the capital to a standstill. A female car mechanic in Pakistan is changing gender stereotypes. Susma Nawaz says she has taken on the challenge to overcome financial problems. This through an engineering degree and working in an auto repair garage in the city of Multan. The 24-year-old says no hardship can break her will and motivation. In rural areas of the country, women are often encouraged to marry young instead of having a career. Canada will become the first large industrialized country to decriminalize marijuana this Wednesday. It will no longer be illegal for adults to purchase, possess, or grow cannabis for recreational use, and a whole new industry is being set up in a record time. Producers are also seeking to buy greenhouses to grow the cannabis plant. The government is now responsible for licensing commercial cannabis growers. And with that, we come to the end of this news brief, but there's so many other stories. You can find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And you can also follow us on social media. I'm Carla Gonzalez. And until the next time, thank you for watching Telesur, connecting the Global South.